And here we are.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. It is the Buttoned Up Podcast, the first weekly, probably, episode.
Yeah, weekly-ish. Weekly-ish.
We'll see how it goes. But this is something that me and Ford have been wanting to do because we literally talk every week about video games. And so, yeah, with HP and Ford.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. We, like you mentioned, we talk almost every week anyways, or at least we try to. So we were just like, why don't we just make this a podcast? You know, we got into such good subjects where we're talking about all these great games and all of our thoughts on them. I was like, hey, why not? Why not make it a podcast?
Exactly. So today, I guess a couple things on the list. At the very least, we're talking about our nominations for Game of the Year and Indie Game of the Year. So we have, you know, at least 6 for each, and then we're gonna have some honorable mentions, and of course just go round robin all through every game and what we think about them, whether we've played them or not. Usually, I mean, you and I are pretty versed in the gaming space. Whether we've played it or not, we either might have an opinion on it, or we've definitely seen enough to formulate an opinion.
Yeah, we've seen enough gameplay, or we've talked to enough people who have played the game that we kind of get a general gist of how it is. Just quick, add on to what you were saying. It's a 6 nominations. This is what we think will get nominated for Game of the Year. This isn't necessarily our personal nomination. Some of them might be, but it's also just in direct correlation to what we think will get nominated for the Game Awards Game of the Year and Indie Game of the Year. So yeah. I can go ahead and get us started off. Just get straight into it. You know, I think that there's 2 on our list that we should just knock out right now that I feel like are unanimously considered going to be nominated for Game of the Year. And I think that is Baldur's Gate 3 and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, those are... You ask anybody who even tangentially pays attention to games, and those are the 2 nominees that are going to happen.
Yep.
Now, how do you feel about those nominees, HP?
I mean,
I know Zelda you're a big fan of.
I'm not a personal fan of Baldur's Gate 3, but I understand its importance in the space. I think literally it is one of the best games ever created in terms of, I mean, everything that they did, right? Like the marketing up to it. They never had any false promises. They released the game like 7 times. Right, but like it was always in this early access stage, and I genuinely think that it is like one of the biggest hits for a long time, and for it to, in my opinion, for it to be so niche of a space, like a turn-based Dungeons and Dragons themed RPG is so in the sticks that I think it's almost impossible to even in my world to even get nominated because it's too niche. Doesn't mean it's bad. I think it's incredible. It's not even my cup of tea. But I think something like Tears of the Kingdom is way more accessible. Mm-hmm. We've seen that with the sales, 19 million or something, versus Baldur's Gate is like 12 or 13 million. But Baldur's Gate, both of them being like some semi-exclusive, like Tears of the Kingdom only Nintendo, and I think Baldur's Gate's on everything but Nintendo, right?
It's not on Xbox yet, but by the end of the year, it's supposed to come out on Xbox, I believe.
Yeah, but either way, I think that there's something to be said about them respecting the players by being only $60 in a $70 world. Mm-hmm. It released incredibly. I'm sure it has its bugs, but no one knows. Like, I mean, nothing to write home about. Not like Scarlet and Violet. Let's be real; those were absolutely atrocious. But like, it's insane that it's so in a pocket of its own, but it is like massively popular. Like it's still 12 million. That's nothing to sneeze at. Like there's not very many other AAAs this year got that many, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. But so, I mean, what do you think about it in terms of gameplay? You played it, right?
Yeah, I played it. I'm still working through it. I'm still in Act 1, so I'm definitely not like anywhere even close to the end. But I really do love it. I really do think that they did a fantastic job of kind of bringing back that kind of classic RPG. I think they call them like CRPGs or something like that, computer RPGs. Bringing that back in a really interesting way, and then also making it accessible on consoles. Like it being on PS5, I think is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I genuinely didn't know that until like last week. So
yeah, I mean, because these types of games generally do not come out on consoles because they're kind of a pain in the ass to play on a controller.
Oh, I would agree.
Yeah, there's so many like different menus. Like even with Baldur's Gate, like they did a fantastic job, and I think they did phenomenally. But even seeing like the way you have to get around to do stuff in Baldur's Gate with a controller, I'm like, yeesh, man, I would not want to play it this way.
Exactly.
But I think that it's a great step in the right direction. And also it's kind of one of the, other than I feel like Assassin's Creed and with their most recent titles other than Mirage, we haven't really
they do the same. They do
not
those?
the same type of content, but they're the same style of length, like same style of like RPG, where it's like 100 hours. I don't think we've really gotten like an 100-hour like RPG since like those Assassin's Creed ones, and I don't really think that those Assassin's Creed ones like are really worth 100 hours for one.
No, they don't live up to that type of longevity versus where Baldur's Gate 3, because there's so much replayability that Baldur's Gate offers, and I think that's why it's in its own pocket, because everyone's experience is completely different.
Yeah,
completely
everyone
different.
has like different choices. The amount of branches they have is,
it kind of blows
insane,
me away,
honestly. Yeah, and you can definitely tell that this game took a very, very, very long time to make. So I definitely think that it's worth being nominated. I definitely think out of the ones that I'm going to list, I think it's probably the one that I would want to win, but we'll touch on that once we have the full list. As far as Tears of the Kingdom, man, I mean, I haven't beat it yet. You and me have talked about this recently. I haven't beat it yet. I still want to get back to it. I will say that
talking about Tears,
historically, about Tears, yeah.
Yes.
Historically, you know, it's known to some of the people in chat right now, and obviously to you. I'm not a huge fan of this shift for Zelda. I'm not a huge fan of like the Breath of the Wild formula and everything. Don't think it's necessarily bad. Just kind of same thing with you with Baldur's Gate. Just not for me. It's not what I want out of Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom, from what I've played of it so far, is the one that sold me a lot more on it, where I'm like, okay, I get why people like this formula. I get why they would continue with this formula. I do wonder if it's sustainable. Like, I wonder if by the time we get, say, like the 4th title in this style of Zelda game, I do wonder how people are going to feel about it then. But at least where we're currently at, Tears of the Kingdom, they did a fantastic job. I think it very much obviously deserves to be in the talks for Game of the Year, especially since, you know, recently in the past year I've started learning a lot of game dev stuff, and a lot of the game dev backend stuff they did in Tears of the Kingdom is just.
So that's what I was gonna say.
Magic.
To interject, I don't think it's, and I know this isn't what you're saying, but just to make sure that no one else maybe thinks this way, I don't think that there's an on or off, like a yes or no when it comes to the Zelda games, because I mean we've gotten between the two. I mean they're all mainline because it's Zelda. It's the front runner. I would say one that's not mainline would be like the Calamity series, right? Or whatever, like where they're like, it's kind of like Dynasty Warriors, I believe, or something like that. Akin
Musou game, yeah.
Yeah, so those might not be technically mainline, but I would consider Link's Awakening a mainline game. So you got Breath of the Wild, and then you got Link's Awakening. It goes from the old formula, new style, whereas Breath of the Wild is new style, or, you know, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild is new style, new formula. And so, well, not new now because Tears of the Kingdom is doing the same thing, but as Breath of the Wild, but both of those being a newer, like the open world style. I just think, like you said, the back end stuff, that's one thing that we can talk about, but just based on where it's going, I love where it is, because I'm not a fan of open world games because I'm not the brightest. I genuinely don't. I can't remember anything. I played GTA. I guess it's like I have object permanence in the real world, but when it comes to like video games, I don't know what happens, but I go into this like hyper tunnel vision. So I don't memorize things. Some things can captivate me in a certain way that it makes me memorize it. But like, for example, I played a ton of GTA 5. I could not tell you how to get anywhere. I had to like orient myself from the hotel that you can buy or whatever it is, like the hotel room, and that's where I could go to my locations from. But I couldn't like go down the road and turn around and then find LS Customs or whatever. I had to like go back to my home and then go there, even if it took longer to do that. But like that's just how I play it. But like you said on the back end stuff, Tears of the Kingdom, that's where I think that this is insanely shines. Like people say the Switch might not be that powerful, and I understand that, you know, 30 frames, 60 frames, like this type of stuff is outdated, but there's zero loading screens. Absolutely zero, except for when you're literally fast traveling from one end to the other. But if you're going from the sky, which is plentiful, to the main map, which is even more plentiful, to the depths, which is even more plentiful. Like it's like you have this 3-layered system, and there's 0 loading times. Like it doesn't even skip a beat. And the transitional things between the music, they have this perfect transition. I don't know. There's something about it. The game just feels like not only is it a magical experience overall, this is why I would say it's nominated, but it's just a good game. Like even if you don't like the Zelda series, I don't even like open world games. I love this game. And I can't wait for you to finish the Memories, because I don't think that... Yeah. I think that even you saying it's nominated is good enough, but if once you do the Memories and or beat the game, you'll feel it even 10 times over. I promise that.
Do you think I would end up knowing my feelings on the Breath of the Wild formula? Do you feel like I change heart and be like, okay, this is my game of the year?
No, but I think that the story might compel you to... I don't think that you disrespect it by any means, but I think that the story would make you respect it a little bit more, because it's not just Ganon, like, because Dragon Ball, the big bad, Goku gets stronger. Zelda is something happens to Zelda and or Link, or they mess up the timeline typically, and then they have to go back and fix it, kill Ganon, game over. It's like that, but there's a little bit more depth to it, in my opinion, and it always does have this depth to it, because there's all this continuity and timelines and all kinds of stuff. So if you look for depth, you get depth. But this one is not only that depth that they're giving us, but with the Memories, there's also like they tie items and stuff and things that you want to the story, and there's something about that with the Memories that ties it in that makes it so special. At least the way that I did it. I think you can do it out of order. I don't know if it would hit the same and resonate the same way, but the way that I did it, got all the Memories, and then I went and finished it. I think for me, that seems like the optimal way. I tried to kind of rerun it in my head if I were to not necessarily beat it, but get close to beating it and then do that. Or even if I didn't do the Memories and then I just beat it, that would still be a special moment. I thought about it because of the way that they introduce the things that I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it, but the things that I'm talking about, the way that they introduce it, I think that you could do it without the Memories and still feel special. But something about completely being in the dark and then doing the Memories felt like this like explosion of just, I don't know. It just hit. It was so good.
I think the big thing that one of the biggest things that they changed from Breath of the Wild that I feel like really brought me in was making the narrative, like the Memories, much more integral to the game and a lot more tied in, because in the Breath of the Wild, it was very much like, if you want to go get this stuff, like, go for it. We're not going to really point you there. We're just going to kind of be like, hey, it's there if you want it. I think them purposely tying it a lot more into the actual loop of the game was a very smart decision and a very good fix from
and it's definitely tied in more, and you'll notice it the more you get, and once you get the final 2 or 3, then you'll really know that it's not only is it tied in like per what the story, but it's tied into the character development and and the emotion driving the plot and stuff like that. So I think that it really does help. And then even with the sages or whatever that you go and get, and that's like the main campaign, there's like extra stuff, and I won't spoil that either, but there's extra stuff that also tie in to the sages, and it all kind of pieces together. I can't wait for you to finish it, because that is a podcast I want to have. That is later down the road. That is a podcast I definitely want to have.
We'll plan on that once I beat it. I mean, at some point I need to just like burn through it, just like sit down for a weekend and just be like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could, if you just beelined it to every memory and then went for the end of the game, I think that you would be fine. Or sages and memories, and so you didn't have to fight the extra stuff at the end. But I agree with you. Breath of the Wild, the memories, I didn't even get all the memories in Breath of the Wild because I didn't fully, not that I didn't understand it, it was like they just give you a picture, and it's cool to get this, because it's like, oh, he's been asleep for 100 years, he doesn't remember his past. Yeah, okay, so we'll go here and get a little memory of the war. But it's like, I get what you're saying, though. It doesn't feel as impactful to the story. It's just like, oh, it's interesting, but it's not enough to be like, oh, I can't wait to get the next one. Whereas these, now I wish you had to get these in order in Tears of the Kingdom, but I don't think that it takes anything away, because I kind of like jumbling things up a little bit, because you got something where it's like you love this, part of the story, and then if it's good enough, if let's say the cutscene, each of them are about 2 minutes, if that 2 minutes captivates you enough that there's questions for what happens next, and wait, how did we get here? I think that balance is a good story. So getting them out of order, because they won't let you get the final one until you get like they won't let you get like the 12th one unless you get all 11. So that's fine. So they don't spoil the full ending of it, which is what you really want to get to. But I think that if you get number 9 and you see something happen, you're going to be like, what happens next and how did we get here? And I think that almost every memory gives you a sense of that. And so I think, and that's what I think is kind of beautiful about the story and it being optional, which is, it's crazy. And then being able to be getting out of order. So
I'm excited to get back to it soon. Yeah, so I think that is the two that are like locked across the board.
Yeah,
Which one will end up winning? We'll see. But what else you got? What's your number 3 that you think will be nominated?
In terms of AAA, I mean, I gotta give it to Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man 2. It looks incredible. I have not played it. I do not have a PlayStation. But God, it looks so good. And there's settings I noticed today. There's settings on there where you can make the web slinging even more realistic. Interesting. You need even more buildings near you, and wherever you go, it'll actually realistically swing you that way. And if you hit something, you'll actually like fall off. So I'm like, now while that puts it into like expert mode, I probably wouldn't play like that. But even without it, it looks incredible. Just the swinging alone. Graphics are incredible. Story seems amazing. I do wish one thing that I saw somebody that and I'll go ahead and type this on mine, but I did see, and I'm assuming that's yours as well.
Yeah, I would throw it on my list
because it's just so good.
One, yeah.
But I think that this guy mentioned that he wishes that there was a co-op because you play as Peter Parker and Miles. Like you swap between both. They mentioned that they wish it would be like co-op, and I would kind of agree with that. That's kind of a no-brainer. I feel like, right? Like to have a mode. Yeah. I mean, maybe it kind of compromises the story that they wanted to tell. But
I'd be willing to bet that that's probably something that's going to happen here. Probably in the next game. Sony right now is doing their whole push for live service games. So almost all their studios are working on some variation of a live service game. And I think that would definitely tie into something that Insomniac might do with maybe not live service, but yeah, adding some sort of multiplayer aspect to it. I don't know if it would be straight up like, oh, like you and Miles or you and your buddy, like you and me could go swing around New York and play through the story and everything. I think it probably would end up being like some form of mode that you would go into, and then like you could go do different activities around, like co-op activities around the world. But I think that's probably something we'll see. Sorry, go for it.
No, well, I was just gonna say, do you think that? So I think that would be an interesting facet. Does it make it better in terms of like, does it push it forward in Game of the Year? I don't think so. Is it even necessary? Do gamers really want that? I think some people would want it, but I don't think it's like, I mean, the game is the game. I mean, how much, like, what activities are you doing? I mean, unless they had a separate co-op storyline or somehow integrated this one to be able to just have a guy jump in, have the little brother grab the controller too, but I don't think we're getting much out of that.
I would agree. At least me personally, in my taste, I would not take advantage of a Spider-Man multiplayer. But I do know that because of Sony's whole push for live service, I think that multiplayer is kind of on the top of a lot of those studios' heads. And so I think that we probably still will see some form of that multiplayer come through. What it actually ends up looking like, what it actually ends up being, is definitely a big question mark. I couldn't even begin to guess because anything I would come up with would probably be pretty lame, honestly.
Well, that's why I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking the same thing because I'm like, well, what are we doing? Are we just, like you said, are we just swinging around New York City? Or are we able to actually do missions? Would they be side missions, or is there like a separate campaign? Should they fund for that? I mean, there's all these questions. I don't think that it's worth it, because I think the game itself stands alone. I don't think it hits these two contenders, if I'm being honest, to win. But I think it is. I mean, if there's three, it's these three. Period.
Yes. I 100% agree with that, where I think like across the board, almost everyone will probably put Spider-Man on their list. At least as like a nomination. Does it have a chance of beating Tears or Baldur's? I don't think so. I just don't think there's enough people that like ride hard enough for Spider-Man, because it's decided 90% by critics, 10% by players. And even with that split, like, I don't know if there's enough critics that are going to like ride for it. I don't know if there's enough players that are going to ride for it comparatively to these other two games.
Right. Plus, especially because considering, I mean, it going back to the multiplayer thing, but I mean, I agree with you on that too. But going back to the multiplayer thing, even then, those same people have been playing the same Spider-Man games without it.
Yeah.
So the fan base is the fan base is the fan base.
Yep.
I think that they might have a little bit of a better shot if they moved it over to Steam earlier. I know that's like a marketing thing that they have to wait for, but still, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that they're even, because the thing is, you know what I do want to say? The thing that's incredible about the top three, period, is all three of them and this blows my mind, are pretty much exclusive. Like, you got Baldur's Gate, which is only on two things. Mm-hmm. Tears of the Kingdom and Spider-Man are only on one thing. That's crazy that they're as popular and as incredible as they are.
Yeah, I mean, when you're developing for, on the dev side, when you're developing for a single platform, it really does. I feel like it really does kind of make it a lot simpler for you, because you don't have to think about, oh, well, this mechanic isn't going to really work with the rendering system or the physics system that we would have to use to port it to Xbox versus PlayStation versus PC and all these.
So you think that that's good for the quality of the game?
I do. I
think
that's
a good call.
I think exclusives generally are pretty good for the quality of the game. I still don't love the idea of a lot of exclusives. Like, I do think at the very least, like, almost everything should be coming out on PC. So if you're an Xbox exclusive, obviously those are coming to PC. But I think PlayStation, I would like them to get closer to having their games day and date with PC. I don't think it'll ever happen. I think they like having a little bit of that leeway where they can get the pop on the PlayStation for 6 to 12 months and then bring it over to PC and then get another pop. Makes sense from a business standpoint. I still wish it was a little bit different, but I think that's one of the big reasons that we've been able to see, looking at like the two big exclusive developers, PlayStation and Nintendo, their games always are at a huge quality standard. And I think that does come with the exclusivity. They only have to develop for one platform. They only have to think about one thing. Sure, they might port it later, but that's the porting studio's job. They can figure out all that stuff when they're porting it.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, their only focus is just making sure that it runs, shines, and is amazing on that one platform.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess it benefits you being on the back end of some things now. You can know these kinds of things. Like, that's interesting to think about it that way of the quality, because I mean, you look at Nintendo. I don't want to get too deep into something else that's not nominations, but you look at Nintendo, and they just release banger after banger after banger. Whether you like them or you don't, they're just releasing heat. All the AAA first-party Nintendo games are just heat. Most of them, not always, but I mean, even I haven't played this yet. But Pikmin 4, I'd say I'm not going into honorable mentions yet, but that would be one, because I haven't played it. But everybody, is it really? Okay, good.
Yeah,
I've heard it's incredible.
Yeah, I've heard it's incredible as well. It's funny, you're drinking boba right now. The boba place next to me had a Pikmin drink that they were making.
That's what they just said when they were ordering it. That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny. Let's see, they know their audience. They know what they got to do. But yeah, I think, and to your point with the development on the single platform and them being bangers, they're developing it on a platform that, for all intents and purposes, sucks. Like, the Switch is not a powerful platform. It is not strong, and yet they're still able to get all that juice out of it to get these awesome games on it. And so I think that's a testament to Nintendo being able to work with what was already semi-outdated architecture when it came out, and now we're
I think they always kind of get what they give, right? I think that they it might be outdated, but is it outdated for the sake of sleek? Is it outdated for the sake of small convenience? The dual property of being able to literally pick it up and immediately go where you left off. It's not like the old PSP, which I understand that's completely dating myself. That's like 20 years old, but still, it was like PlayStation 3 to PSP. It was quick, but it's not Nintendo Switch quick. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
and it's all on console. The Switch is the console, so it's like I mean. Is that what's sacrificing it? Probably, but they, like you said, they work with what they got. They're not prohibited by their limitations. They're kind of shining despite them. I feel like.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that their limitations allow them to really kind of get into the nitty gritty of what they can actually do and really push the system to its maximum. Which actually, speaking of the Switch, this is actually perfect segue. I'll just throw out my number 4 right now. I think it's going to be Mario Wonder.
You know what's so funny about that? I was literally about to segue back into the nominees, and I think that I think I agree with you 100% because, dude, I have not had a smile on my face for a game, and it's not. I think it's going to win? No,
not a chance.
But I do think that it has a spot for nominations. Out of all the games we got this year, I would agree that this is not a snub. I think this is a nominee because it's widely loved. Who doesn't like? There's very few people that would just be like, I don't want to ever play not just Mario, but like because Mario is like the classic, like not just the style of game that it is, but the character himself or the franchise rather. Everyone knows Mario. Everyone loves Mario. It's just a win-win all around, and I think that I mean, dude, I definitely don't think it even has a shot in hell to win at all. But yeah, man, I had such a smile on my face playing it. I still want to play it. I want to speedrun it. I am obsessed with this game, and I think let me start off the conversation of why I think it's so good. I don't know if have you played it yet?
I've not played it yet. I do have it, and I am looking forward to playing it once I get through some of these other backlog games.
So I think there's a couple things that you'll really appreciate. It is, first and foremost, a side-scroller, but right behind that is a rhythm game. Behind it. It is very much so. There's a lot of levels that are actually rhythm-based, quite a few, actually. And most of them you can play more rhythmically. But that, as for you being a sound guy, you're gonna love the audio engineering. Like it took me a second to really pay attention to it, but it's that feedback that we talked about in game dev. It's that feedback. It's every jump that you do, every pipe that you enter, every Goomba you stomp on, everything that you touch and do and interact with. There's something, even if it's just like a leaf brushing against you when you run through the trees, just that little bit of feedback. And they spent and this is where I'll top it off. They spent so much money. They had to have on animation alone. And it shows because everything has a perfect animation. I mean, if you're not even if you jump near a Goomba, nothing. If you jump near a Goomba, nothing. You could jump around them all you want. But the moment that you're like pixels away from stomping on them, they even look up at Mario and go, ah! Like they give this like screech out like
Goombas, you know.
And if you are doing the same thing to a Koopa, they do this something similar, and then they do something else whenever you throw a shell at them. If the shell is coming close to them, like you throw a shell and it's spinning and spinning and spinning, and then at the very end of the lane is a Koopa, they literally like and they sweat and like that's like the first time that these like very minute, but in my opinion, super necessary for the simplicity of a game like Mario Wonder is. It's just a side scroller. When you start adding in those things, it gives it that much more charm. So it's not just a Mario game. It is everything, right?
Yeah.
It is everything. Like for example, one of the coolest things that I noticed was, and I don't know if you saw it on when you were watching some of the gameplay, when you go through a pipe, like a sideways pipe, Mario's hat flies off, and then right before the screen transitions, he reaches his arm out of the pipe and pulls his hat back in. And it's like, awesome. It's all those little nuances that just make that game so charming.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, even watching, I've been watching a couple of your streams and everything, and even watching your streams, I think that, yeah, animation-wise and just like presentation-wise, I think you could almost say as a whole is phenomenal. And I think you can definitely tell that they've gone a long way in making it so that this is like the most polished and presentable 2D Mario, which I think is really what the franchise, or at least that side of the franchise, needed. 3D is kind of a different idea, but like past few 2D Mario games have all been good, but they haven't been like blow you out of the water good. You know, they haven't been Super Mario World good. And it seems like this one is, from what I've kind of seen and what I've heard other people talk about, this seems like the first one that's been like, oh no, this is like up there with the other 2D Marios. With everything that it's done.
I've barely played like new. I would agree with that because I've barely played New Soup, and I mean, what else is there? I mean, besides like Super Luigi is one. I've never really played
Super
that either.
Luigi. There's like New Super Mario Bros. On
I think
the Wii.
there's New Soup and then there's New Soup U.
Yeah.
But both of them, when I look back at it, and they look incredible. They look fun for what they are, but they're not. When comparing it to something like World or Wonder, and even World, but Wonder, it's like wow, there's something missing, but it didn't feel like it back then, but now it does, and I think Nintendo has immensely stepped up their game on 2D Mario's because wow. I mean, especially the animation department. Now, I saw a video comparing the two side by side, Wonder and like New Soup U, and they're very stiff. The jumping is just the jumping and just maybe like a simple animation, just your regular standard Mario jump. It doesn't feel like there's not like this fluid or like uniqueness. Like, I mean, there's like, 8 characters and they all have their own unique movements and even sounds. Like Peach has her own voice lines. Mario, Luigi, they have their own voice lines. They even have their own jump sounds. Like even the boing, like even those little things. Every character is so different. So, I mean, I would agree that this is definitely the best 2D, since World. And it might even be better than World. I think it's not better than World in terms of, like, Worlds. Well, I mean, we don't know yet because it just released, but I watch a lot of, ROM hacks and stuff like that. And World, the engine that World is on is almost, like, perfect for a platformer. And I think that, and that's why Kaizo and ROM hacks are so popular. But Wonder might be on that same route because they've already been... I'm watching the modding community pretty closely, and they're right there on it. So
I just realized this is the first 2D Mario since Mario Maker, isn't it?
Yeah, if you count Mario Maker, yeah, it is.
So first 2D Mario in a post Mario Maker world, huh?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Do you feel like the kind of side tangent? Do you feel like the level design in Wonder kind of has taken some cues from Mario Maker and like what the community did in that?
Yes, because I think, dude, that is such a good question. That is such a good freaking question because I think this is something that I've been thinking about because you'll notice it if you play or watch Maker, which I watch a ton. I played a little bit, but I watch it every day. And in Wonder, you can see whether it's Kaizo ROM hacks or whether it's just Kaizo Maker Mario Maker stuff, you can see that they took inspiration at the very least from what the community is doing and not just made it for I wouldn't say children, but just simple. Like they just designed it to be a simple Mario game. Like there are some levels in New Soup or Mario World, even the special worlds that are a little bit more difficult, but I think this game tested your they respected the player. Like there's some levels that are super easy and there are some levels that are absolutely destroy you, especially if you're not a gamer that actually plays 2D side scrollers. And I even saw some speedrunners have some trouble. Now obviously they're masters at it now, but I had some speedrunners that were pretty struggling on some of these levels that definitely took inspiration from some of the top creators on Mario Maker. Whether, I mean, a game designer is a game designer, right? So they might have thought of it on their own, but there's definitely, I think you're right. I think that there is something there. That is such a good question though, because that every time I would do something, I'm like, oh, that is such a Maker thing.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. I'm when I end up playing it, I'm gonna be on the lookout for that kind of stuff. Because I do think that's kind of an interesting thing that you don't really see in games, where you came out with games that allowed the community to kind of mess with your tools. And then the question becomes, how did you learn from those, those things that the community did?
Not only did they give us something amazing with Maker, and we want more, of course, but they also learned from it. It's not,
Yeah.
they didn't just give us a game. They're like, how can we do, I mean, they're basically getting, not only are they getting free case studies, they're getting paid to do case studies because they're like, hey, here's Mario Maker, here's all of our assets, $60, and then everybody's like, I'll pay $60 for that, and then they make Wonder, and they're like, hey, we kind of copied all the things that you did in the game that you bought from us, so it is genius.
Game design for us nerds.
Exactly. And you know what's cool though? A lot of those makers are not only going into ROM hacks, but they're learning how to code. Because in Maker you're not coding, right? You're just doing tile sets, but because Maker is a gateway to ROM hacks, those early dev people, they're going into development now, and so they start using. It's a little simple, but they get even crazier with these ROM hacks. But they start to learn how to code, and then after that, I've seen some of them start to make their own games, or they're going to make their own games. So it's really interesting to see.
That'll be cool to see in the next few years, as like some of those. That's something I've looked at on a couple of things with like Dreams is an example from like PlayStation, where it's one of those things of. I'm interested to see the kids who grew up playing Dreams and making games in Dreams, or making things in Mario Maker, or so on and so forth. I'm interested to see what do those kids' games look like, 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, when they actually go and like work in a, big engine,
An actual studio.
Yeah, an actual studio and stuff. It's going to be very interesting, because more so than ever, kids have access to very early tools.
For sure.
For development.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
All right, so we can get off Wonder. We can circle back around to it, but
yeah, I think so. This is what I think our lists diverge.
Real quick, hang on 1 second. I did want to see Super Saiyan Jones in the chat said some of the games people make on Roblox are insane. Fully agree with that.
True.
I've never played it.
Yeah,
I've only seen it. I come across it on like shorts and stuff and TikToks, and it blows my mind how good those are. So I can only imagine where it's gonna, like you said, where it's gonna go in the next few years. Because we're gonna get some bangers.
Really solid point. Yeah, that's a really solid point. Because Roblox is like, you never think about Roblox, but like it's massive. It makes so much money.
It really does. Yeah. Anyway, so you can, if you have another, because I don't really have another one that I want to. I have a few that I want to discuss, but I don't think I have any other, major nominees. But I'll follow your lead here.
So my next nominee, it's hard because these last two slots I feel like are the toss-up slots, where like the difference in votes from critics for getting these titles in are going to be like single digits. It's going to be like 3-4 people voted for this thing over this other thing. I'm going to say, even as I'm looking at my list, I'm like, is this what I really want to go with? I'm going to say, I think the 5th nominee is going to end up being Final Fantasy 16.
Okay, that's. I mean, there you go. I would probably agree with that, and I haven't even seen much gameplay on it, but I trust the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah, I feel like the main reason I go with Final Fantasy 16 over some other stuff. I think that Final Fantasy 16 has enough people that actually played it, and enough reverence for the Final Fantasy series, and it's a PlayStation exclusive. And even if people don't want to say it, PlayStation exclusive does give you a couple of brownie points, I do think. They very purposely curate that kind of stuff. And so I think that does, even if it's just like 1 or 2 votes, that's going to be the 1 or 2 votes that are going to make the difference. I have not played Final Fantasy 16 yet. Notoriously, I was working on a full Final Fantasy series playthrough, and then my life had a bunch of changes happen, and I didn't finish it. But I'm going to get back to it, and then I'm going to play Final Fantasy 16.
All the creative minds turn into the unfinishers, so I'm with you on that.
Exactly. And so, but everything I've seen about it, like the music I've heard, I've gotten some spoilers on it, and I'm like, damn, this sounds like a fucking game. I will say,
I would love for you to play it, and then one of our next future podcasts from now, whether it's a month or 2 from now, I would love for you to play it and then come report back, because I do want to hear your take on it, being like how much you love it. Because admittedly and honestly, I've never played a single one. I think I've played a little bit of Crystal Chronicles back like when I was very, very young, but I've seen them played, and I've watched you play all through 1, 2, and 3, and I've seen a little bit of 7 from what other people have played, but I'm not the one to be on this train at all, but I trust your judgment. I did enjoy what I watched you play. So
that's the interesting thing, is I do think that the Final Fantasy 16 presents a divergence point for the Final Fantasy series, because historically it has been a little bit more strategy, you know, not completely like, you know, over the past few iterations, they become a little bit more action focused. But this is the first one where they were like, okay, we're an action game now. Like, we're not doing.
I have a question for you then. Do you, as a person who has played pretty much all of them, or at least all of the styles,
yes,
do you like this switch? Because for example, let's organize it in the same vein as how you felt about Zelda. You don't mind, you like the 3D Zeldas, but you didn't like the open world, which is still the 3D format,
correct,
just in a more modern style. Because I mean, if Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time could have been open world, they would have been, but they're not. So how do you feel about this Final Fantasy shift, like from not just turn-based, but then they went to MMO and then they went now back to the action? What do you feel about that?
I'm a little split on it, because I do love action games. You know, it's not like I'm a, you know, turn-based purist. There's some people that like didn't like 15 and didn't like even 13 because they're like more turn-based purists, which is fine. You know, I totally get that. I kind of wish that they would, instead of changing styles, I wish they would have just tried to iterate more on a turn-based style versus going to action. I mean, granted,
do you think that there's a way to marry the two?
So, you know, actually, I'm gonna break out of this real quick to bring something in.
Yeah.
So, indie nominees. I want to talk about Sea of Stars.
Yes.
So, Sea of Stars is one that I just started playing just a few days ago. Came in HP's chat. I'm like, quick, tell me what to play. These 3 games. He said Sea of Stars, and I'm a man of the people, so I went and played Sea of Stars. And Sea of Stars has been phenomenal. I'm about 5-6 hours in, and it is absolutely phenomenal. I adore this game for so many reasons that you know, I'll kind of dive into a little bit later on.
Real quick, how big is this company? Do you know?
The company that made Sea of Stars?
Yeah.
Sabotage Studios, I know, is the name. How big they are?
Because I know some people were saying that they're like AA, basically saying that they're not fully indie because they're very big. We don't have to go tangential to this too much. I want to hear what you think about it, but I'm just curious now, because I saw people on Twitter having like an argument, or X, whatever you want to call it. I think I saw people having like a little discussion about it, about that not being a fair nomination.
So 23 members of the team.
That's indie. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, you could make an argument for AA. Like, you know, bigger games have been made with smaller teams. But I would still put this in indie. One, because very specifically, it is self-published. They do not have a publisher. It is made by Sabotage Studios and published by Sabotage Studios. And also, I think that this is kind of a topic we'll probably get into, maybe not today, but even on another podcast. The whole concept of indie is very, very outdated, and I feel like does need
right. It's not black and white. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, for example, like you know, I listen to a lot of other gaming podcasts, and one of the titles that keeps on getting brought up as like, oh, this is indie game of the year is Dave the Diver, right?
Oh, I've been seeing a lot of stuff on it. Oh, you have played it?
I've played Dave the Diver. I love it. It's a great game. It is not an indie. The studio is Mint Rocket, which is a team that was made by Nexon, one of the biggest gaming companies in Korea. That's not indie, right?
Right. By definition, no.
Indie.
But you know what's so weird is when you look at something, you almost want to say this is indie because it has this weird, and it's not just the graphics on it, right? It's the charm. There's something that you can feel that it's not corporate. Does that make sense?
Even though it's being made by one of the biggest
right, that's what I'm saying though. There's a feeling to it though. That's what's weird.
There is a feeling to it, and that's why, like, I do think, like, as an industry, we got to start like referring to indie, if anything, by like budget. I feel like is the big thing, where it's like, yeah, a big company can go off and they can make an indie game, and what that means is this is a lower budget game. You know, we've got 5 to 10 people work on this. It's lower budget, lower stakes. This is, you know, that kind of thing. I think that's probably a better definition. Like another example, you know, Riot Games, you know, League of Legends creators, the big boys, you know, they have a publishing desk.
The Riot Forge.
Riot Forge.
Yeah.
would we consider all the games that come out of Riot Forge as
indie? Yeah. I mean, but they have a bigger budget, but the team is a bit smaller, or at least more. They have a niche focus, but does that give them the indie title? That's a good. That's a good point.
And so I think that's like one of those weird things where like Dave the Diver is probably going to get nominated for Indie Game of the Year, whether or not it'll win or not. Even though I have a big, to me, I'm like, by any definition, I don't think it's indie. Maybe by budget, but we don't know what the budget was. But like by
is that something we could look up? Maybe.
I doubt it'll give you an exact budget, but you could probably get like a estimate. Maybe.
What would you consider indie if you had a perfect world to call a budget and give some antics to?
Under, let's see. Let me pull out a calculator. We're gonna do some quick math, everybody. Hold on. Derail for some quick math. If I was gonna pay everybody $80,000 over, let's say 10 people, times that by 5 years, I'd say anything under about $5 million, I would consider indie.
This says it looks to be roughly 2 to 3 million, and 3 million is the highest I'm seeing.
Okay, then sure, I would consider.
But I don't know if this is guaranteed. This is just some Reddit post from 3 months ago. But I mean, if someone's talking about it, they probably know more than I do. So I mean, let's at least take 3 million by that. But it is a low. Would it not be a lower cost developed game than it would be something, even if it's not indie, the way that the game that it is, like it's a cool concept and it's a great game to play. It looks like, but would a game like that really cost too much more than that anyway? Even from the biggest corporation, Probably
not. I mean, it is pretty, it's pretty deep game, I would say. But yeah, I don't think that you'd be looking at like, I definitely don't think this had a budget of anything over like 10 to 15 maximum. And I think even that's like extraordinarily high. And so I think this does, an interesting shift in the game industry is I am starting to see like larger studios start to realize like, it's taken us 6-7 years to pump out a game and the budget of that game is, $500 million. Like they're starting to realize that they got to start pumping out smaller titles that have lower budgets and can, in a lot of cases, have a lot more return. Okay. And I think that the Dave the Diver is an example of that. I think Riot Forge is a perfect example of that. Riot's not going to go off and make some, Song of Nunu comes out next week. Riot as a studio would have never said, you know what we should do, guys? We should go make a game about Nunu and Willump and take all of our devs off of League of Legends, thing that makes $1 bajillion.
Right.
No, they're
going to take that bajillion dollars and fund it into a smaller project like Nunu and Willump, So
they wouldn't even have to spend that much though, because the other smart thing that they're doing is that they're not making teams for this; they're partnering with teams.
Oh,
so,
okay.
For example,
so but they're under the Riot Forge umbrella.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So well, that's why they look so vastly different. Then that makes so much more sense.
Yeah, because for example, Song of Nunu is being made by Tequila Gameworks, I believe, which very weird when you consider Tequila Gameworks' history of games. They made horror games before.
Interesting.
So, very interesting divergence there. And so that's the other smart thing is they're not having to hire up whole teams to do all this stuff. They're able to go to teams that already have processes planned out, and they're able to say, hey, we want you to make a League of Legends game. What do you want to do? And they're like, we want to make it about this character. And then they go and do that.
Right. I mean, I haven't played any of them yet, but they all look I've played the
Ruined King, right?
Ruined King. Yeah, I played the Ruined King. Not my style. I could see it why people like it. Not my style though.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I still want to get back and finish it because I actually was enjoying it. Convergence is the one that I really want to play, and I just keep on waiting till there's like a gap in my game list.
That is the Echo one, right?
That's the Echo one.
So if it had more boss fights or mechanics in the boss fights and then more platforming, I think I'd be more into it because I thought it was going to be more not Assassin's Creed, the one before it, Prince of Persia. I thought it was gonna be more Prince of Persia-esque, which, yes, by the way, the new Prince of Persia looks so good. Yeah, so good. But it looks good though. It looks good.
Yeah,
I haven't played the Silas one either.
of getting back to Sea of Stars because I still want to make my point.
Okay, yeah, for sure. We'll go.
Like
Yeah,
4 tangents in.
this is how we do it, though.
This is how we do. Anyway, so Sea of Stars, fantastic game. I'm loving it. 5 to 6 hours in. There's so much I could gush about it right now that I won't necessarily go into right this second. I think once I beat it, I'll want to have a section on the podcast where I talk about it.
Absolutely, and I would love to hear it.
But the big thing I want to bring up is that I think that Sabotage Studios they are geniuses because they've had 2 games so far. They've had this game, Sea of Stars, and they've had The Messenger from, I think that was like 2019 or so. The Messenger, if you don't know, was essentially like a Ninja Gaiden, like classic Ninja Gaiden style game. And I remember playing that and saying a very similar thing to what I'm saying to Sea of Stars, which is these guys are so good at basically going back in time to whatever era that game was from and saying, what sucked about this? And how can we make it modern?
Love that.
And kind of like skipping the decades of iteration that happened. And I think it presents a really interesting dynamic to their games to where they still feel so like playing Sea of Stars feels like I'm playing Chrono Trigger. Like it definitely feels like this is Chrono Trigger 2 essentially. If it was made back then, but with modern sensibilities. And one of the examples I want to bring up is with the combat. So with combat, it's a turn-based game. So, it brings up a menu, says, do you want to attack? Do you want to use a skill? Do you want to use a combo? Do you want to use an item? Your general thing that was around back in the 90s, right? And I think they do a genius thing, which is that instead of it being like, I select attack, and then an attack happens, it's I select attack, and now I get to essentially do the attack mini game. And now,
so is this something akin? Before you get into it, just because I haven't watched too much of it, I've just seen some of the animations and how beautiful the game looks. But
yes,
is it something akin to Undertale, like that, where there's like a mini game with the attack? Or
so Undertale is an encapsulating mini game where like it is just like one mini game essentially that you're playing that has like slight variations. It is semi-similar. But in this instance, like for example, if I hit attack, the mini game is essentially time your button press during the attack animation, and you get a second attack. Essentially,
quick time event.
Nothing
essentially,
crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Finally, plenty of games have done that kind of stuff. The really interesting thing comes with a lot of the skills. So all the skills essentially have unique style, quote unquote, mini games. I would call them. So for example, like
so it's skill dependent.
Yeah, it's skill dependent.
Okay.
So one of the skills, for example, like the moon boomerang, right? It's really fun because it essentially now becomes a bouncing back and forth game where you throw it out, it hits the enemy, it comes back to you, and if you time your press, it goes back to the enemy, and then you can just keep on doing that infinitely. Literally as many times as you can hit that boomerang back in rhythm and in time. Obviously it speeds up and everything. It will keep on hitting over and over and over and over.
Well, Mario RPG and technically Paper Mario, but Mario RPG has one that you can actually do that infinitely, and it goes into a 3-frame window. On certain attacks, so
stuff like that, and then
which was made by
like
Square Enix, so
so good old Square doing all those RPG mechanics, And then like other ones are like, oh, you can charge up and then, release at a specific time. Some of them are like timing with your teammates. Some of them are straight up like button combos, like pretty much everything that you do in the game has a uniqueness to it to where it doesn't just feel like I'm pressing attack or I'm pressing moon boomerang. It's I'm pressing attack and then doing the attack mini game. And then I'm pressing moon boomerang and doing the moon boomerang.
See, that's one of the charms that I loved about Paper Mario. I think Paper Mario, the original and the Thousand Year Door, they each attack and each badge that you had, any flower point move that you would use, or any character partner like buddy that you would have, or party member would have something like that. Whereas a lot of the older ones didn't have these like uniqueness, like even Thousand Year Door and Paper and the original Paper Mario. Like if you're using Cooper, you would like in Mario, if in order to jump would be like, oh, jump on the enemy, time it right, hit A. Whereas like Cooper would be like, oh, you charge up the shell, so you're charging it up with holding left on the joystick, and then when it goes D D D D on that last final fourth D, you let go and it flings him like a slingshot. So there's things. So
very similar.
Love that. That's gonna be my kind of game because I don't like the traditional JRPG hit a button, wait 20 minutes until everybody's turn is done, and then move on.
Exactly. And so I do think now that you're bringing up Paper Mario, I'm remembering, I'm like, yeah, that does actually, it lines up very well, and I think that that has been like one of the best things about this game is just that the combat is like some of the most engaging stuff. Whereas in a lot of turn-based games, that is the opposite. It's some of the least engaging stuff. And you're doing it to get the story beats, to get the character moments, to get the exploration,
Right.
all that other kind of stuff.
Which isn't a problem, but it is nice to have both.
It is nice to have both. And I to loop it back to Final Fantasy, what I wish they would have done is I wish they would have tried their hand at like iterating on the turn-based stuff more, like Sea of Stars or Thousand Year Door. I wish they would have done a little bit more in that. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more iteration in that space, because coming from a studio like Square Enix that has, decades and decades of experience now at this point of doing those type of games, I think they could have really brought some interesting and fresh ideas. But they instead decided to go the action gameplay route, which once again, I don't have a problem with, especially since the person they brought in for it was one of the gameplay directors for Devil May Cry. So like, if you're going to make an action game, you got the right guy to come in and help out with making an action game.
What do you think? So you would say they went more towards the action route and less JRPG. So there's not really a turn-based section. What do you think if they were to marry it? Like, this is totally hypothetical and game devy of me, but what do you think if they married it like, so for example, the Origami King, not the best Paper Mario rendition, but it does something that I think might give us a little insight into what I'm talking about. So in Paper Mario and the Origami King, it's not a traditional JRPG. You don't do attacks, you do like a little puzzle every time you get into a thing. But despite that, let's say that is a traditional attack, turn-based attack thing. Whenever you get too powerful, like, so say it's a Goomba and you walk into a Goomba, just like any Pokemon game or Final Fantasy early games, and you get into the battle, right? Well, if you've been to like later levels and you're a higher level now and you come back to these early levels, now when you walk into a Goomba, if you do a first strike animation or something, so you hit him with a hammer or you jump on him outside of combat, it'll just insta kill him because you're too strong. So it's like, why waste this turn-based thing where you can just kill him? Do you think it would be better if Final Fantasy 16 maybe married those concepts? So where it's like early on you have like 7 attacks and you turn-based, my turn, do a flame sword thing, whatever, right? And then this their turn, then your turn, just like traditional JRPG Final Fantasy stuff. And then if you get to a section where there's a lot of enemies, or you going back to a section where you might be too strong, they let you just kind of action fight them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be something there. I think that the only, from a hypothetical standpoint, I feel like it becomes hard to really sell your audience on what exactly
what are we doing here?
I feel like we're kind of splitting. What I hope is that because they've now gone action, despite what a lot of Final Fantasy fans say, I actually hope they stay with action, and I hope they try to iterate on it.
Is the selling point more the story at this point than it? Because it seems like it's always been very story driven. JRPG was kind of like just the format they used, but now action gives people more to do while telling that same story.
For me personally, I do think that the big selling point for me for Final Fantasy for a very long time now at this point has been the story. I want to get the story. I want to know about these characters. I want to know about the world you've built, all that kind of stuff, because that is what Final Fantasy, I feel like in a lot of ways is unrivaled at. Like the fact that they make these wholly new, brand new worlds for every single iteration that just shine and glow, I think is one of their biggest selling points. And so that's why, like, for me, the fact that it went action, not necessarily my preference, but at the same time, it's not even 100% why I'm there anyways. I'm there because I do want to learn about the story. I do want to learn about the, all the magic system and all the stuff they got going on. But I do hope that if they are good, I hope the next one, Final Fantasy 17, is still an action game. And I hope that it ends up just really doubling down on that action so that they can iterate on it. Because right now, from what I've seen of Final Fantasy 16, it does seem simple. Like some more simple action. It doesn't seem like there's like a ton of depth to it from what I've heard from a lot of people and from what I've seen. Kind of seems like once you've kind of reached mid game, you've kind of explored the combat system. And so there's just not a lot of depth to it. And so that's why I say with Final Fantasy 17, I'm hoping that they are like, cool, we've got the bones in place. Let's start making some depth to this.
So if there were a 3-tiered system, you think that this still deserves a nomination, but it's not going to get Game of the Year? So
Absolutely will not get
like
game of the year.
like you don't think it deserves to not be on the nomination. You do think it deserves to be nominated still.
I think so. I think that they, from everything I've seen, and everything,
Because it
I've
looks
talked
great.
about,
It looks
some
beautiful.
some of the spoilers I've gotten, it definitely seems like this is like one of the best games of the year from like a full production side. And so I do think it deserves to get nominated. Not a chance in hell that it gets gets the award, but it will definitely get nominated.
Okay. Did you want to jump into your sixth, or did you have more for Final Fantasy, or what?
I'll jump into number 6. So number 6 is the one where like this is a complete toss up. I'm gonna say 2, and I'm gonna probably be pretty short on them. But I do think it go either way. I will say the one that I think it'll be first, which is Alan Wake 2. Just came out, but the response to Alan Wake 2 has been huge. It's already been hyped up for a long time. Some people are going as far as to say this is one of the best like survival horror games ever created. Granted, that gets thrown around a lot with a lot of these titles, but I do think that there is going to be a little bit of recency bias. So in about a week or two, when the critics do get their ballots to nominate games, I feel like they're going to remember Alan Wake 2 and they're going to nominate it. I saw earlier in the chat somebody mentioned Resident Evil 4. I unfortunately think that Resident Evil 4 probably won't get nominated because of something like Alan Wake 2. I think that if you're like, oh, I kind of want to nominate a survival horror game, you're going to jump recency bias to Alan Wake 2. You're not going to jump to Resident Evil 4, let alone the fact Resident Evil 4 is a remake, which I don't think disqualifies it. There's a lot of people who think that disqualifies it. I don't. I think that it's still, it got remade from the ground up. It has a bunch of brand new stuff to it. Like it is a new game. But I don't think that'll end up getting nominated. I think Alan Wake 2 would end up taking that.
I know this isn't good much for topic of for the sake of topic and a podcast, but I can honestly say, and you can weigh in here how you feel. I have only heard of this game. I don't even know what this is. If I'm being completely honest, I have like not even the first one. I mean, I have no idea even what this series is. I have heard the name. To be honest, if you want me to be honest, Alan Wake sounds like a 90s alien TV show.
You're not super far off from what the game is.
It sounds like like those like old like Animorphs or whatever, like all those types of old, like the TV show. I can't remember what it was called, where the girl would turn into goop. She got like radiation poisoning and she could like turn into lead or something. That's what I think Alan Wake is. It's like, oh, it's Alan Wake. He's the alien from another planet, but nobody knows but his family. I have no idea what it even is. I just know the name. I've never seen it at all.
Oh God, dude.
I want to. I mean, if it's on your list, I want to check it out. To be honest, I won't play it, but I'll watch a playthrough.
Alan Wake 1 is a cult classic, so it honestly doesn't surprise me. It was a 360 game, had a cult following. Was the first one amazing? I don't personally think so. I played through most of it and I kind of fell off. It is one that I want to get back to and finish, especially now with the second one out. I got close to the end. It's definitely dated. It's definitely hasn't like blown up a lot, but I do think that the concept of what it is has really been kind of solidified with Alan Wake 2, especially because it's being made by Remedy. And if you don't know, Remedy's the ones that made like Control back in 2019. And I think that really helps solidify like the tone of their games. And so I think that I think Alan Wake 2 will end up getting nominated, which in a stacked year like this, I do think is going to be a little bit surprising to people because survival horror games just don't really get nominated very often. But from what I've seen,
not only that, but like you said, stacked. It is very stacked this year.
It is a stacked year, but I think the recency bias helps it a lot. I think that people will have just beaten it and they're gonna go, oh man, that was such an experience. I got to put Alan Wake 2 on there.
Did you have a second sixth or?
So yeah, my second sixth is Street Fighter 6.
Okay.
But I just
do you think it's in the same vein as like as not as Baldur's Gate, but in terms of like, because how I said Baldur's Gate was so niche, I think Street Fighter, I almost said Star Fox because SF. So Street Fighter is even more niche Now,
And that's why
does that make it bad? Not at all. It looks incredible.
No.
I watched Taves in the chat. I watched him play it a little bit. Holy crap. It looks great.
Yeah. That's the thing is I've watched people play it and I've fallen in love with it. Like I'm not a fighting game guy just because I'm bad and you know I'm just gonna get my ass kicked. But I've watched people play it and it looks incredible. Every single fighting game person I've ever talked to, and I actually have a couple of friends that are really into fighting games, has basically said this is like the second coming, essentially. Like this is like the game for fighting game fans. And so that's why I'm like I could see it. I don't think it'll happen, but I could see it. If nominations come out and people are like, oh man, Street Fighter 6 got on there, I would not be surprised. I would be a little bit surprised, but it would be deserving. I think it is more than well deserving. It's just, yeah, it's a fighting game. And you've got to get, I think it's a board of 100 critics, like critic places put in their votes for it. You got to get a lot of those guys to put you on their list. I just don't know if that's going to happen, man.
I don't think so either. I agree with you fully. But like Wes just mentioned in chat, he mentioned MK1. What do you think about that? If they had to pick a fighting game, which one's you think Street Fighter still or what?
Street Fighter for sure. Everything I've seen about MK1 is like, oh, it's really good, but that's kind of it. Like it's not like it's changed the game. Whereas like people are talking about Street Fighter 6. Sorry, Final Fantasy still on mine. People are talking about Street Fighter 6 like this is like the game for fighting games
right
in the past like 2 decades is the way people be talking about this thing. So like I think MK1, while it did get good reviews and people have enjoyed it, and I've seen a lot of people really talk about the cameo system and how that brings a lot to the game, I just think that when you really compare it, I feel like SF6, Street Fighter 6 just has it in the bag. Especially like even if you go look at like I was looking earlier, like if you look at the aggregate review scores, I think Street Fighter's at like a 92 and MK1 is at like an 81. So it's like a pretty wide difference as far as critics are concerned, which, you know, doesn't mean everything, but they are the ones that are going to be nominating a lot of this stuff.
Wait, did you say 82 and 81?
No. So, Street Fighter 6 is like 91 or 92.
Oh, I heard 81, 82, and I was like, wait a minute. What? That's not much of a difference. He's like, it's wildly different.
Whereas, yeah, Mortal Kombat is like an 82 or 83.
I mean, that's pretty vast for being or somewhat official rating, you know?
Yeah, somewhat official rating. Yeah,
so
exactly.
you're going to think... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't take that stuff as gospel, but it is a pretty good way to kind of guide what's actually going to be considered.
Guidelines is the best way to put those types of things, because
yeah.
I hate relying on them, because some people do for their purchases, but.
And yeah, those are my 6. I think so. To go through it again, it's Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Mario Wonder, Final Fantasy 16, and Alan Wake 2. I think that is the nominees that'll end up happening.
So you think SF6 would just be like a very honorable mention?
Very honorable
mention. In a non-stacked year, maybe it would hit there.
In a non-stacked year, and in a world where fighting games had that type of... Here's the hard thing, though, and this is why I still consider that it could happen, is like, if you're a fighting game fan, you ride and die for this stuff. Like, so every single fighting game fan in the industry is probably going to put it on their list, which is why I'm like, I could see it. Honestly, this hurts my heart to say, I could even see it bumping Final Fantasy 16 off the list. And then you would have
interesting.
Alan Wake.
I mean, I have seen, I'm not going to lie, I have seen more stuff. If I had to compare the two, and I've never played either one, but I've seen more Street Fighter than I have Final Fantasy, surprisingly, because Final Fantasy is a freaking in the gaming world, is a home name. Like, it is the name. I mean, if you think of best RPGs in the world, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is any Final Fantasy 7, 6, 3. You know, it's like, it's crazy. So. Or 4,
honestly,
rather.
Like the more I stew on it, the more I'm like, is Final Fantasy 16 my bias pick? Is that just what I want?
No, I mean, I have it on mine too. I agree with you, because I've never played it, so I don't really have a stake in the matter. So my last 2 are just toss-ups. Final Fantasy is a toss-up for me because I've never played it. Yeah. But I respect its name in the space. That's really
Yes.
why I'm choosing it, because these last two, not only have I never played, but I barely ever watched. But I can tell you this: you're gonna think my last pick is insane, but I'll tell you why.
Okay. Let me
So
hear
I'm
it.
looking at a list, and we have great games. I mean, you said Alan Wake. I trust your judgment on that. I think you're probably right there. Do I think? Let me go through a couple. I don't think that these are honorable mentions at all. If anything, I have two that I want to say that are dishonorable mentions, and one that's an honorable mention that I think is overlooked because it's a stacked year, and I've never played it, but I think that we'll just get into it. I think one of my slight honorable mentions because I want to build up my sixth, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
That's on my honorables.
So the first one, I would say that's an honorable for me as well.
Yeah.
And the first one, I've never played, but I watched it, and it looked incredible, and it was very well received, but then it just kind of fell on the wayside. I picked it up for like $1 the other day. But this new one, I haven't seen anyone talk about it, but I also trust it being as good as the last one, if not, better. So I don't see why that's not even a topic to some people, but that would be an honorable mention. Pikmin 4, of course.
Yeah, Pikmin 4 is an honorable for me too.
And we can talk about these. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Finish your list. We'll talk about them all after.
So we can talk about these in depth in a second, and then dishonorable mentions, completely shattered expectations, and I say this with the utmost respect to these dev teams, because I absolutely love everything else that they've ever made. So I no disrespect, but Diablo 4 is a very dishonorable mention. Yeah. That game just ruined the entire series, in my opinion, because of everything that I've seen on it and everything that I've played up till it. So Diablo 4, while the gameplay might still be core Diablo, it doesn't have Diablo's charm. It doesn't bring to the table what Diablo is to me, which is rich story, deadly bosses, deadly feeling. Like the main antagonist does feel deadly. I will give them that. She feels overbearing, and I love that. They did such a good job of pushing her to the forefront of the villainous of villains. I love that. And I love the intro scene. The intro scene is incredible. The way that they unlock it with the blood and it's a sacrifice and all this stuff. Very, very cool intro scene. Where I have qualms is they didn't do anything to change the game itself. They just kind of gave us kind of like a little bit of a mess. The story, like and I've seen some people talk about this, so I'm kind of quoting them, but dude, what even is, they don't even have names for these shopkeepers. Like, I don't even care about these NPCs anymore. New Tristram doesn't feel, or the spaces don't feel like Tristram. Tristram felt magical and not magical in the sense of like beautiful, but magical in the sense of like in a fantasy world. It felt like a city we needed that we resided in. I don't even know these cities anymore. I don't care about them, and I don't care about the shopkeepers. They're all different. There's not a single shopkeeper. They're just all random no-name people. And then the very end, the cutscene for the ending, which I won't spoil the ending itself, but it's just a deadpan across, and it just shows like a horse walking, and then it's a guy narrating it. Whereas you go back to Diablo 2 specifically, and you have the ending cutscene is the guy begging Tyrael for like forgiveness, and he's just like, and it just shows it. First off, it's from the freaking 90s, which is insane how good it looks. But that guy is begging Tyrael, please, I don't want this anymore. And it's like, it's very cinematic and story driven, and you can feel this guy's pain. He doesn't want to deal with this pain anymore. Diablo 4 doesn't give me that. It's just, well, a long time ago in the land of Diablo, and it's just a horse just kind of walking, and then they deadpan across like a fence. There's no actual cutscene. That's so disrespectful to the franchise and what we've come to know as the series. So that's a dishonorable mention. And then, of course, everyone knows, if you know me at all, Starfield is a very dishonorable mention. And I thought it was a decent game. I wouldn't say it was even close to even nomination worthy, but I would say that it was a decent game. If I didn't look back and get it's not even nostalgia, the beauty of something that they can make like Skyrim. Go back to 2011 when it came out, 2012 when it was popping. because if you remember, it also came out on 11/11/11, which was really cool.
Yeah, which is incredible.
And you hear that bum 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 bum, like you, and it's Dovahkiin, and it gives you this invigorating feeling to go on an adventure. It doesn't even do that. I can't even think of a song from Starfield. It's very bland. I'm not saying that the teams did bad on any of these fronts, but they didn't captivate me like something like Skyrim did. And if I feel like you've captivated me like Skyrim, and I didn't like the Fallout series, but some people did, if you aren't captivating us like those two games, don't even bother if you're not going to put in that same level of effort. I think that Starfield did some things incredible, but in terms of what I expect, if Starfield just came out, I'd be like, this was a good game. But it's the fact that it came out under Bethesda's umbrella. That's insane to me, because they could have done so much better.
I think that Starfield, I've actually been thinking about this a lot because we've talked about it a few times. I think if Starfield was announced and it was going to be, this is going to sound weird, but I feel like if it was going to be a live service game, I feel like people would have been a lot higher on it.
Well, I mean, at that point, you're just making No Man's Sky, which had already felt like a generic version of No Man's Sky. Yes. But how is it a generic version of No Man's Sky when it's Bethesda, the biggest company on the planet?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, but that's the thing is, like, I feel like when you announce and come out as a live service, you get a little bit of leeway where it's like, they're going to add more to this later. But the problem is with Starfield, from what I know of and from what I've seen, I don't plan on playing it for a while because I just don't have time for these 100-hour games. I just don't.
Well, you want to know what something even more? It's even more than that, because apparently, and I've watched it. Like I've almost beaten the game myself, but I've seen how the ending is. You don't even get, like, you beat the game and then you do New Game Plus. You don't get like the real experience until New Game Plus 10.
Yeah,
10 times. Who has time for that?
Time for that. Yeah, I ain't got time for that. But I think if they would have been like, oh yeah, it's a live service game, we're going to be doing updates to, these systems, because that's the problem that I see with it is it has a lot of systems, but they're all very shallow, except for maybe the shipbuilding system, which seemed like it was pretty in depth. But from what I've seen, it definitely seems like it's just really shallow. If it was a live service game, we knew they were all going to get updated, then I think people would have been nicer to it. But I agree with you. I don't think there's a shot in hell this gets. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, it'll get nominated for sure. I'm like,
I think it'll get nominated. Like, if I had to take Final Fantasy off my list and throw it in there just because it's the name Bethesda, I think that would happen, but it's not on my list. It's not. It might be on the world's list for whatever fucking reason, just because it's under Bethesda's umbrella. I disagree, and I wouldn't put it on my nominations as a shot in hell at all.
Yeah, I know there's some people that like ride or die for Starfield. I don't know if there's enough people for it to get on the list. Not this year. On another year, like if this was last year, for sure it would have been on the list.
It would have been a nomination for sure. Definitely wouldn't have won.
A nomination for sure. It wouldn't have won
because you got God of War and Elden Ring. There's no shot in hell Starfield's beating that.
Yeah, you're not winning that. Yeah, I think with the year that we have right now, there's no way. There is no way that it gets nominated. I feel like maybe I'll eat my words. Maybe we'll come back and be like, damn, it got nominated and it won. Can't believe that.
Right.
Then I'll just kind of quickly jump through. I did want to talk about Jedi Survivor. You talked about.
Let me give my official 6 though, real quick.
Oh yeah.
So I just had to get those out of the way because I could not believe that. But my official 6, and this is weird, only because Elden Ring is so popular, and we're From Software type games, like the Souls-like games are very popular. And I've, again, never played this, and I don't even like this style of game. And I've actually heard bad things from this, but I think that the From Software / Souls-like nerds are going to be able to push this maybe a little bit more forward. I think Lies of P might actually have a shot.
Really? Wow. See, I thought you were going to right turn and go for Armored Core, but Lies of P, interesting.
I mean, that could be there too. I could put that as an honorable mention.
Interesting. Lies of P. I see. I don't even have that on my honorable mentions. I do think, from what I've heard, it is a pretty good game, and like people have said, it is the best Souls-like that is not from Software. But man, yeah, in a year like this, I have barely seen anything on it.
I've barely seen anything on it. I think just because people like that style of game, and we didn't even get any this year besides that one. Like at least as far as I know, notable ones. And I don't even like these style of games. And I've probably seen maybe 5 minutes of gameplay of it. I'm only putting it up there just because of the genre. I've heard that it's not even that good. I've seen critic scores of like 60. Like, it's not good at all. I've heard people in chat really love it. Like whenever that's a good one.
Point.
That is
Remnant
a good, yeah.
too.
That's a.
I keep on forgetting about that because once again, there are people that like ride hard for Remnant.
I played the first one and I absolutely loved it.
That's a good call, Wes. That's a good call. Yeah, Remnant 2. That goes on my honorable mentions. I think that I think that's worth it. Destiny 2, baby. Lightfall. Let's get it nominated. Let's go.
Lightfall doesn't have a shot in hell. Now next year we might have a shot. But Lightfall does not get a shot.
Yeah, Lightfall doesn't have a shot. Final Shape, yeah, maybe, but we'll see. The next year's already looking pretty stacked, so we'll see. Okay, yeah, Liza.
Well, I would have put Jedi Survivors on there, but I'm not sure. I would have. Like I said, I would probably put that with my Final Fantasy thing because I don't know. I would probably put Jedi Survivors there, but I haven't heard anyone even talk about that one this year. But we did talk about it, Colossal. I don't know if you were here. We talked about how I think that the first one was very well received, but I think this year it kind of got overlooked because there's just so many good games. And Hogwarts Legacy, I don't know if I would even put it on there, only because I don't think it was a bad game, and I only watched people play it. I never played it myself. But it seemed like it would get stale fast. I watched about 2 hours of gameplay from one of my creators that I like to watch, and it seems like after a while you're just kind of, Appendio. You're just casting the same spell over and over again. And it seems like it just gets a little stale. The puzzles seemed interesting. The boss fights seemed pretty interesting, but overall, a long-term scaled battle, it seemed like it got kind of boring. Plus all the backlash. I don't even know. And like Ford mentioned, the recency bias. It was literally one of the first games this year to come out. People might even forget about it, except for the, backlash of all the crap going on with it.
That's the thing is, like, people don't think recency bias is like, I've heard many years people were like, recency bias is a thing, and I'm like, it 100% is a thing.
I do think it's a thing, but I don't think it's a thing if the game is big enough. I don't think. True. I think Tears of the Kingdom releasing in the middle of the year, it could have released February or January, and it's still. I don't think it gets beat by recency bias. I think it's still it's so good. In Baldur's Gate 3, same thing. Baldur's Gate 3 and Spider-Man 2. I think these top three that we have could not be affected by recency bias. Whereas Mario Wonder, Final Fantasy 16, Alan Wake, those might be affected by recency bias if they came out earlier in the year. But there's no shot in hell that our top three is affected at all because they're just such top tier games.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah,
exactly. Colossal. Elden Ring was released in February, so I mean, and it was eons above. I mean, it was like 80% above God of War, which is insane because both were very well received.
I would have voted for God of War, is all I'm going to say. But no, I agree. I think that there's a certain quality of your game that could kind of make it last. But I don't think Hogwarts has that type of quality that you would need to outlast a whole year of just banger after banger after banger after banger. I did put on my honorable mentions as I think that, a lot of people, a lot of places are going to probably nominate it. Not Game Awards probably, but a lot of other places might talk about it. Jedi Survivor, I will say, I think that if it would have landed... Because Jedi Survivor, the reason why you haven't heard a lot about it is because it landed pretty rough as far as like bugs and playability and everything. Did not play very well. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I was playing through it, and it was so bad to the point that I was like, I just have to play this once.
Oh, you have played Survivor?
Yeah.
So it's just buggy.
It's extremely buggy. It's very bad. It runs like crap.
What is with that? Because I mean, there's some times where I want to think that like a Pokemon game would get there. I mean, Arceus, I don't know if it was nominated last year or whenever it came out. I don't know if it was ever nominated, but Arceus seemed like it was a good shift in the... it's either... I feel like that game is a black and white thing, right? Like you either love it or you hate it. That's what I've seen. I haven't played it, but it looks like a very new take and a good take. Not new enough take, but a good take on... a different take on Pokemon. But then Scarlet and Violet, people love that game, despite it being like one of the most buggy messes a AAA game could have ever came out as.
I mean, this is gonna
and that was this year, right?
No, that was late last year. That was like November last year, I think.
Scarlet and Violet, really?
I think I could be wrong, but I thought it was.
Oh yeah, November 18th. Yeah, it was about a year ago. Good call.
With the bullet. I mean, the reality is like, and this is gonna show my bias a little bit. Nintendo gets such a pass for that kind of stuff. People look at the Switch and they're like, "Oh, it's like 8 years old."
I disagree. If Mario Wonder and Tears of the Kingdom were as bad as that, I wouldn't give it a pass. But there's
you know what? Actually, I will give that to you. I do think Pokemon specifically, I think gets a huge pass.
Well, of course, because that's not just Nintendo. That's because it's the biggest franchise in the world. Yeah. It is absolutely, and it's by far too. If you look it up, I think it's like the next franchise behind it is maybe like Harry Potter or something, or you know, or Marvel or whatever. But it's like Marvel, not even close,
or something like that. Yeah.
But it's not even close. It's insane how. It's crazy, but yeah.
Pokemon's always going to get a pass on that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, it's like
it's also the kids might not care too much, like because if they're the target audience, they're not going to care as much as for a polished game because they're not the ones spending the money either. Too.
Like I do not envy anybody making monster catcher games. Like one of my nominees we'll get into in a little bit is Cassette Beasts for the indie games,
right?
And I don't envy them because any monster catcher that comes out literally gets dock points immediately because it's not Pokemon.
Right.
Like people automatically just care about it less because it's not Pokemon. And it's unfortunate that they have such a stranglehold on the genre while not doing enough for the genre. But I digress. But yeah, Jedi Survivor just ran really rough. So honestly, I think a lot of people were probably just like me, where it's like, I guess I'll come back when it works. And I think most recently, I think like 2 weeks ago, they came out the patch that people said was fairly substantial and making it run better. So I am excited to run it back and see if it does run better. Because yeah, I mean, Fallen Order is one of my favorite games of all time. You know, in fact, I tell people all the time that Fallen Order is actually probably one of my favorite things from the Star Wars IP, movies and everything included. You know, I'm just a sucker for a story about friendship. You know, anytime you're like, you know, the power of friendship, I'm there. Brother.
I mean, I'm kind of with it too, to be honest.
I'm there. At the end of that game is such a like power of friendship moment. I'm like, I'm so there. I'm so in it.
I would agree with that. I like that too.
But yeah, other ones we already kind of mentioned, Hogwarts Legacy, Armored Core 6, just because it's from Software. I know a lot of people liked it. Mech games are very niche, so I don't think it gets nominated. I could definitely see Armored Core getting nominated in like a best action game of the year.
Yeah, I could see that.
Possibly winning that. But yeah, I don't think you end up seeing it get nominated.
Didn't a new Bayonetta come out this year too? Or no? Speaking of action games, was that last year?
The like spin-off Bayonetta game came out this year, I think. Like it was like Bayonetta.
Oh, that was like a different style. It was like a top-down or like an isometric.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that came out yet.
That I think will probably get nominated in other categories, like Octopath Traveler. I know a lot of people loved. It won't get nominated for Game of the Year, but like RPG or something like that, I think I could see. One weird one is Cyberpunk. I've heard a lot of people. That
didn't come out this year, though. They did have the DLC.
But yeah, Phantom Liberty came out this year, so I've heard a lot of critics kind of say like it could get nominated as like a.
I mean, I heard it's incredible now, which is crazy. Yeah, exactly. the reception. It was like this is the worst thing ever to the same people saying this is the best thing ever.
Yeah,
and I think that was a lot of copium, but I think that now they might be deserved of it now.
The copium's very heavy. Well, but yeah, like I said, a lot of people say it's great now. And so I could see a reality where that gets up there to kind of give it its flowers that it didn't get when it first came out. But I think once again, in a year like this, there's just so many other like full titles that I just don't think it'll happen. If Elden Ring DLC dropped this year, that would have been huge.
Oh, for sure. I thought it was supposed to.
It was originally, but I think they never really announced a date for it, so it kind of got like soft delayed, like internally or something along those lines. I think the current rumors are something around.
I mean, like by how much January. It won last year, I think that if it ever drops at any year, it probably just takes the year.
Yeah, I mean, especially since this one seems like it's going to be pretty expansive.
Yeah.
All right, want to move on to indie nominees? Talk about those real quick. This will be a much shorter section.
If you can give me a slight break, if you wanted to talk with chat for a second or whatever, just give me a quick break.
Sure, chat. What's going on, chat? You guys want to talk real quick? Tell me what's up. What do you think about the list? I said 2023 or early 2024. Yeah, I think 2024 is probably the safe bet. At this point, you know, they're not going to announce like a December DLC drop or anything like that. That'd be pretty crazy if they did, though. If they're just like, by the way, Game Awards, it's coming out in a week. Bye. But yeah, I think once that drops, that'll definitely be a huge moment for everybody that loved Elden Ring, and even people that didn't, because everyone's going to talk about it. Let's see what else we got. Though I do wonder if Elden Ring DLC could actually end up winning. Like a game, like if it got re-nominated for Game of the Year, I do wonder if people would be like, we already gave you Game of the Year last year. Like, you got to give other people a chance from software. You can't take everything. You can't take all the stuff, you know. But I don't know. Stranger things have happened. People are just going to go vote for what they end up really wanting to vote for. So looking at this list, I do think that Liza P is an interesting one. / Jedi Survivor. I really wish Jedi Survivor would have landed a little bit better, because I think if Jedi Survivor landed better and was not as buggy, I think it would be on the list. I think it would probably bump off something like, for me at least, for like an Alan Wake or a Final Fantasy 16. I think it would bump it by a hair, but I think it would bump it. But yeah, the fact that they just kind of floundered that launch, like even on the consoles, I know I heard that it was running pretty rough too. I feel like that really kind of hurt its chances of getting nominated for mostly anything. It might get nominated for Action Game of the Year or Best Action Game or whatever. I think that's what the category is called, right? Best Action Game. Yeah, Best Action Game. Yeah, I think it could get nominated for that.
I've returned.
Probably won't win, but all right, welcome back. All right, so indie games.
Yeah, I mean, you're leading the helm on this one, because I've really only played 2, I think, that I can even think of right now. So, but I've seen quite a bit on some of the other ones, and I trust your judgment, so we can have a discussion there.
Yeah, I originally, when I first started making this yesterday, I started making my indie nominees list. I was like, I don't know if I have 6 that I can nominate, but after going through it, I'm like, you know what? I think I got a pretty solid list. I think that it's going to end up being, we already talked about Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars, I think, is a lock. It will get nominated for Indie Game of the Year. There is absolutely no way that it does not.
100%. I think it might even take it.
I think that it probably will take it. My heart still belongs to Cocoon, which would be my second one. I think Cocoon...
I want you to talk about that game without spoiling it as deep as you can, because I want to feel it out. And I know that you don't want to spoil it too much because you want me to play it, but I would like to hear your take on it and why you think it's so good, because I know why Sea of Stars. It's gorgeous. Everything's perfect.
Yes.
I've played Inside, so I know the developer a little bit when it comes to Cocoon. I do want to hear your thoughts on it and gameplay wise, maybe even sound design and visuals. But I can understand those, but you just kind of put it out to the ether. I would love to hear about all of it.
Okay, so let's talk about Cocoon. I think that Cocoon is probably one of the best puzzle games to come out in probably the last decade. The last game I can think of from a puzzle game perspective that I was this floored by would be The Witness, which I believe was like 2011, 2012.
The Witness. That I've played that.
Yeah, The Witness was phenomenal.
Is that the game I'm thinking of? Hang on, let me look that up.
You're like connecting dots, basically. Is like
yes,
the puzzle.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah,
I haven't played that in forever.
Yeah, Witness is a phenomenal game. I think that this is the best game since then in the puzzle genre. So essentially, if you don't want to know anything about Cocoon, sorry, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. There's not much to say on the story aspect, because the story is very like ethereal. Like there is like a story and a narrative going on, but it's definitely one of those ones where you're kind of just there's no voice acting, there's no dialogue. It's very much just like environmental storytelling. And you get like a handful of like little scenes, like not even cut scenes, but like scenes like in engine.
Right. But essentially pretty same format as Inside.
The concept in the gameplay of Cocoon is essentially that you are completing puzzles within a world that is also within another world that is also within another world, and you have to complete puzzles within those different worlds that interact with each other to then move forward and gain progress. And so, to be clear, because it's not like I'm in this dimension, but then I go to this dimension. No, it is straight up, you are on a different world completely designed differently, and then you'll jump into another world that is also completely designed and different, and you'll jump into another world that is also completely designed and different. And you will have to do things within those worlds to get progress in the other worlds, and then those other worlds will help you get progress in that world, and then so on and so forth. And really the masterfulness of Cocoon, I feel like, comes from the fact of I cannot even, as a game designer, I'm pretty new to it, but I've been designing for a little bit now. As a game designer, I cannot even begin to think how the hell this guy, I believe is Casper Jepsen or something, I think it was the guy who did it, cannot even begin to think how the hell this guy thought of this stuff. Like, the amount of times while I was playing the game that I was going like, what? Like, mind-blowing.
It's like puzzles you've never seen before, or
puzzles I've never seen before, solutions I've never seen before, things I've never, like, you're having to think in so many different dimensions because of all these different worlds that I'm like,
you're getting me so interested in playing.
How did this guy like conceptualize, like, yeah, you're going to do this thing over here, and then you're going to jump out of this world, which is going to make the orb do something else to this other orb, and then that orb is going to cause this ability to happen in this world. And
but does it feel smooth? Like, it doesn't feel convoluted.
Dude, that's the thing, is at no moment in this game did I feel like this is too convoluted.
Right. So it's all cohesive. That's good.
It's all cohesive, and I think a lot of that, once again, comes from a design perspective of it's a one button game. Other than movement buttons, you've got movement buttons, but then you only have one other button, an action button, and it's completely contextual to everything around you. So that action button will do different things based on the context of the environment or what is around you. And you may say, like, that sounds like it's going to like do things that I don't want it to do. I'll hit the action button, it'll like do a thing I totally didn't want it to do. Never once did that happen.
So it's always fluid.
It is so contextually sensitive that it understands when you are trying to do something, which makes it like it's a game that I legitimately could tell anybody to play. Any single person could play this game because it's one button and it's all contextual, and the game understands the context of what you are trying to do. And
so it sounds like there are multi solutions to these, or is
definitely.
it or. So
I think there's multiple puzzles. I think there's some that are like you have to do it a certain way, but there's definitely some where I'm like, I don't know if I solved that like the way they planned to, but at no moment did I feel like, oh, I broke the game or anything like that.
Right.
Like, I definitely felt like they planned for these multiple solutions. Because like I said, the context, like I could ask my mother to go play this game, who does not play video games at all, and she would be able to understand it and be able to get through it. I guarantee for a fact.
Okay.
Beyond that, sound is incredible. All the worlds are beautiful. I loved kind of the ending as well, like the ending kind of story thing that you got. There's like a whole mega secret, like not even tied to an achievement, like ending you can get, which was really cool. Like, all in all, like I almost want to stop there because I don't want to spoil anything else, but like, trust me, if you like puzzle games even a little bit, you're gonna love Cocoon. It is incredible, and it's like a 1 to 2 sitting game too. That's the other perfect thing about it, is this is not a game you're gonna have to play for 20 hours. You're gonna come in, you're gonna sit down for about 5 hours. You split that up over 2 sittings, 5 to 6 hours, and you're gonna beat this game, and you're gonna go, wow, I just played one of the greatest puzzle games ever created.
I'm so looking forward to playing it because that is such high praise coming from someone like you. So
yeah, trust me, man. You'll be the amount of times I swear every 10 minutes I was going like, what? Like mind-blowing moments when you do these puzzles. Yeah, it's an incredible game. I hope that it wins. Honestly, I for me personally, I put it in my like just regular game of the year. Like, not even talking about indies, I put it in my regular game of the year nominations. I don't think other people will. I don't think enough people are going to play it, but I think that it is that good to where it deserves to stand with things like Mario Wonder, Spider-Man.
That's one of the things I was going to ask you when we were doing Game of the Year nominations. I'm like, I mean, sometimes indie games get on that list.
Yeah, sometimes they do. Hades, is a famous one that won.
Celeste.
I don't think that Celeste. I don't think that happens this year, unfortunately. AAA has just been so stacked.
Too good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been so stacked that I just don't think there's anywhere to squeeze them in. Like I said, I would, but I'm not the industry, and I know the industry is not going to end up letting those guys squeeze in. But yeah, Sea of Stars, I already talked about it a lot.
Absolutely,
one that I honestly
it's gorgeous.
don't want to talk about a lot, but yeah, Sea of Stars is phenomenal. It, if you have a soft spot for Chrono Trigger, even if you don't, you're still gonna love it. But like, especially if you like Chrono Trigger, dude, you're gonna love this game.
I saw someone's ultimate in that game, and I was like blown away. The visuals, the graphics. I love this like hyper HD pixelated style that some companies are going for now, and I can't get over it. I love it because theirs is more like a 32-bit. I feel like a little over SNES era, maybe, but a little bit more hyper HD. And then you got maybe with a little bit more pixels, and then you got something like Celeste, which is like a very 8, not even 16-bit. It's like an 8-bit almost looking type game, but it's very beautiful. And so like these games that are doing these types of things, I think that for me is a selling point just in the art department.
Yeah, art's amazing. That's the thing, is like I could not name a negative about Sea of Stars right now. Everything about it, I absolutely am loving. Art, music, characters, story, world building, like everything is just like so, especially world building. Like I do want to, like as somebody who's like working on a world right now and doing writing and everything, man, this game is so cool. Like someone had some crazy ideas and they really make them work in this game.
That's so awesome. I can't wait to play that too. I'm definitely playing them. Just give me some time.
Yeah, if there are 2 indie games you played this year, it's Sea of Stars and Cocoon. I feel like those are like the 2 you got to play. And that goes for everybody. Everybody in chat right now, I think anybody who's listening to this later, Cocoon and Sea of Stars are the 2 indies you need to pay attention to. And then I do think for my number 3, I think Cassette Beasts is also going to get nominated. I
haven't seen anything on it, but I do want to play it.
Cassette Beasts is phenomenal. It's a monster catcher, so Pokemon like. Except for it, to me, it solves like all the problems about Pokemon that I've ever had, which is why I think I really am enjoying it and why I really.
That's what I loved about Temtem. So.
Yeah. The Temtem, I feel like also did a lot of the thing, like fixed a lot of things that Pokemon has.
I agree.
Like I said before, it sucks because, just by virtue of you being a monster catcher, they're like, Temtem is cool, but
not Pokemon.
It's like,
yeah, but it's like
Pokemon guys.
Right. If Pokemon was like the number 5th franchise in the world, maybe we would be able to get away with other games in the genre, but it's just too hard to compete with such a gargantuan beast. It is way too big. Because it's like Charizard is so memorable, not Fleet de Florfin from Cassette Beasts or whatever. You know what I mean? Like people care more about these.
Florfin's my boy.
Yeah.
Got the plushie back here of him and everything. I do think Cassette Beasts is definitely one of the ones that has gotten the closest to Pokemon. Temtem probably right behind it, I would say. Temtem's also pretty close, but I think Cassette Beast captures a lot of like the more Game Boy Advance era of Pokemon that a lot of people like us have more nostalgia for, whereas Temtem I feel like captures a lot more of the modern, like Gen 5 and on Pokemon.
Yeah, like Black and White and stuff like that.
Black
X and Y.
Yeah, things along those lines. Yeah.
I could see that.
Not a ton to say about Cassette Beast, just that if you love monster catcher games, I definitely highly recommend it. Like I said, it fixes pretty much every issue I've ever had with Pokemon. They are genius designers, awesome, monsters to catch. It's just a great time. Great music too. Fantastic music.
I have no opinions on this because I haven't really even seen anything about it. It is on my wish list, and it's been on my wish list for quite some time, pretty much since they announced it, because I love monster catcher games, but I've never been one to actually get into them besides Temtem, because Temtem seemed like something special, so I wanted to give that a try. Absolutely loved it. So I know that if something is as good as Temtem or close to Pokemon, that might change the formula just a little bit, just to make it a little bit more adult accessible, I should say, versus like just being so easily placed. Because I mean, like a lot of people play Pokemon, especially adults that are playing Pokemon, they're playing the Ironmon challenge or they're playing Kaizomon, and it's like we have to make these rules to make it a little bit more challenging or enjoyable for us, because you can just take Charmander and take him to the end because without even catching another Pokemon, because they're so over leveled and the pacing is a little weird in Pokemon. But that's not how Temtem is. You really have to use your characters and their resources. So Cassette Beast, I assume, is probably similar.
Yeah, Cassette Beasts actually did a step further, where at launch they integrated all the Ironmon, Kaisermon, all that kind of stuff. Like you could just do that stuff base level in Cassette Beast.
That's awesome.
You can randomize the game. You can randomize all the monsters. You can do the Ironmon. You can do all that stuff. Like the people who made Cassette Beast, I think it was 2-Bit in Studios, I think was what it was. They really understand their audience, and like you can tell these guys play a lot of Pokemon because they understand what sucks about Pokemon, and they tried to fix it.
That's good to hear.
For number 4,
I do have a third. No, I do have a third for me.
Okay, cool.
We don't have to stay on it too long. I know you haven't played it yet, but I know you've watched me play it a little bit. Chance of Sinnoh.
That's right.
I don't think Sinnoh, this, man. In a world of Sea of Stars and Cocoon, or in a year of those two, I don't think it has a shot to win. But God damn it, if it isn't a very charming, very fun, and puzzling, and very, thought-provoking game, because it taps into something special of the human consciousness that we you would think we, as a society, this is getting a little deep, but as a society, you would think we've lost. Just because we grow up with language and we just know it. And then if you want to learn a language, you just learn it. You go on Duolingo. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like when you're faced with learning it via context clues and not because it's already an established language, it's not it's an established language because it's in this game, but it's not an established language, but it gives you the same feeling of like, I don't know, it feels something about it. Maybe I'm crazy, but it feels primal. It feels like you're tapping into something of the human consciousness that isn't really tapped into in video games. And I absolutely adored this game. I haven't fully beat it, but I'm on like the last level, and man, it's very good. Very good. Yeah, definitely deserving of a spot.
Yeah, that's one I actually want to play. Thank you for reminding me of that. I knew I was forgetting one that I wanted to put on there. I hope that it gets nominated, honestly. I don't know if it will. I don't know if it has enough like marketing push, I guess I would call it. But I honestly hope it does, because I think you're 100% right, where I think it taps into something really unique about not just games, but about us. And I would love to see that get recognized. I really hope.
Yeah, that's a decent story too. If you're kind of paying attention, you can kind of see what's going on in the background, and then it's like the evolution of society, and you can see it kind of getting better visually because and culturally within the characters or the different societies. They get more and more evolved and fleshed out, but they also get a little bit more destructive, I feel like, which I think is a beautiful thing to see in a story, because it really tells the story of the human experience, the good and the bad.
Oh yeah, that's one I want to be before the end of the year. I gotta add that to my list. In fact, I'm gonna write that right now. Chance.
Okay. So Jones did mention, before we get too into the fourth one, I would actually put this on there. You can go ahead and talk about your fourth, but I do want to put it on my mentions. And
okay,
Dark and Darker.
Dark and Darker. Oh yeah, I've seen so many people play that game. Did that come out? Because I know they were just doing like early access, like beta tests and stuff for a while. Is that like out?
So they had a cease and desist, and so I guess, long story short, and I could be absolutely wrong, feel free to correct me, chat, but something, it came out, and it was like a small company that was doing it out of like Korea, and they were like, okay, well, apparently what the public had gotten was a game, and then we were like, oh, okay, we're good, and then it was like, came out that they had been using assets from a game that they used to work for in another company or something like that, and so then that company sent them a cease and desist, so they had to completely stop production. Now I think that the game alone, it stands off. I don't think they win the lawsuit, but I think it gets nullified. I don't know the legalities with it, but I know that something happened where they can technically re-release it, but it can't be on Steam because Steam doesn't. I think what they're doing is not wrong, but I think Steam just didn't want to be in the middle of it. Like legally, I don't know how it all works, but it was something like that. So they released it on some shady back end, half dark web like website or something. I don't even know how it all worked, but I don't want to download it now because I heard it's like filled with malware or anything, something bad. I don't know how it all works, but I heard it's not good to be downloading it right now. But when it was on Steam, I absolutely adored this style. I think it was a little too difficult in the PvE side of it, which you could argue that that's what made it very fun and exciting, because you're not just against PvP. But I think that the PvE should have been a little bit easier. Maybe the character movement or the combat could be a little bit more fluid, but it was very responsive. If somebody swung at you and you actually ducked it, it actually missed. It wasn't like I don't know. So, because we haven't really had this kind of sword fighting combat, at least for me, that I've noticed since something like For Honor. Now, it wasn't For Honor good in terms of fluidity and combat, but it had its, like, you could actually have tactical movement and it actually affected your outcome. But I think that the style of game is what something we need in the space. I don't think Dark and Darker's it, but I think in 5 years there will be a game that is hack and slashy, first person, melee medieval.
It's like an extraction shooter.
It's an extraction shooter, but it's a fantasy medieval. Yeah, medieval. I think other than Marathon, this type of game, not just extraction, but extraction fantasy medieval, I think that is a space. I think make me first person in Diablo style combat or something, Dunzo. I think that is the type of game. So that's why I would put it as a nominee. Jones, I mean, just reminded me of that because it was very fun.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wouldn't dare download it now.
I do know, like, I'm excited to see where extraction shooters go, because we're definitely in like the infancy of that genre.
I'm so excited.
Like, stuff like Marathon, man. Oh man, I'm so excited for Marathon.
I can't wait.
I'm so excited for Marathon. These last three, I'm just gonna kind of rapid fire them at you, honestly, because I don't really have too much to say about them. They're just the ones that I think will get nominated just based off of what people have said. Basically, Blasphemous 2 would be one that I think is going to get nominated. It's had a lot of talk around it in the indie space, and it's extremely highly rated. It's essentially like a side-scrolling, like
yeah, I played Blasphemous 1.
Perfect. Yeah, just more of that, basically, just a more refined version of that.
It's like a Metroidvania, right?
Yeah, Metroidvania light. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Dredge, which is one that came out around summer this year. I played the demo from Steam Next Fest, and it was pretty good. It's basically you're a fisherman going out catching fish, but then it starts to get very like Cthulhu, Dark Sea,
I like that
craziness. Yeah,
love Cthulhu stuff.
Me too. And then the last one I'll bring up is Viewfinder. This was one a lot of people were really, really excited for when it was coming up. And then it landed, and I think it kind of cooled a bit. But I still think that enough people really enjoyed it that I think it'll end up getting the nod. If I had to swap this out with anything, it'd be Dave the Diver, which, let's be real, Dave the Diver is probably going to get nominated, even though I disagree with it, as we talked about earlier.
Because it's probably not an indie game technically, but...
Yeah, not an indie game technically, but it'll get nominated for indie game. I guarantee Dave the Diver gets nominated. So I'd probably take Viewfinder out for Dave the Diver for like the actual list. But yeah, Viewfinder was another puzzle game, very similar to something like The Witness. Like I said, when it came out, a lot of people said it didn't quite land on the things that they wanted from it. But I know a lot of people still really enjoyed it. The one curveball I'll throw in here is a game that actually has not come out yet, but I think it's going to come out late enough that I feel like it might miss the time, like for people to play it and then nominate it. But the Talos Principle 2 is another one that I think could get nominated.
Was it Talos? T-A-L-U-S?
The Talos Principle. T-A-L-O-S, yeah. Talos Principle 2. It's a follow-up to, obviously, the Talos Principle, which was very much like a...
Never heard of this.
Portal-like puzzle game. You go into rooms that have like a bunch of different objects. You got to solve it based on like mechanics, physics, all that kind of stuff. First one was very good. It basically explores, the story also is basically, it explores like the human mind. You are a robot in a world where humans are, I believe, gone. I never really figured that out. But
it looks great.
You are essentially in like a Garden of Eden for robots.
I love that concept. That's really interesting. I'm gonna have to check that out.
The Talos Principle 1 goes on sale for like $2. So if you haven't played it, definitely
oh my God, yes, dude. Wes just hit one. Pizza Tower. That actually might win. I have not played it.
I don't know, man. I heard people talking about it, and I looked at it and I was like, I don't know about this, man.
I don't think it's for me. I think it's a little bit too much. I don't think it'll win, but I think it gets nominated for sure.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's definitely on my list. I forgot all about it. I don't think that I would really enjoy it. It's more Wario than it is Mario.
Yes.
But it's interesting.
Okay. I could see.
I don't necessarily like. I like the art style, but I don't like what it looks like. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't like the way the characters look. How he's very Wario style, aggressively looking weird. But I do love the pixelation, half animation, like
the
choppy. I don't know. I love it how it looks. But I mean, it's not. I mean, the top two here, Cocoon and Sea of Stars. I don't think it's touching them, but.
I do think there's one that could touch it. It is Talos Principle 2. Like I said, we'll have to see if it because it comes out, I think, like November 7th. And if I had to bet, like around that time is when they're going to start getting ballots. So that's why I'm like, it might just miss the mark to actually get enough people to play it to like get it nominated. But I mean, Talos Principle 1 was incredible. So I have no doubts. And everything I've seen about Talos Principle 2 looks phenomenal.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into it. I'm just looking at it on Steam right now, and it looks pretty good. And what you said about it, the concept seems really cool. I love this this era we're going into. It used to be like we're going towards the route of like the Horizon Zero and stuff like that, where it's like we're in a post-apocalyptic world where we made robots and then we've destroyed ourselves, and robots are kind of like part of the world now or part of the ecosystem, like in Horizon. But if it's something like where it's like humans are gone and robots, like almost in a world of WALL-E, but even after WALL-E, it's like this, like where there's no more humans, it's just robots. I kind of like that take on a story. I think that's interesting.
Same. I'm very excited to play this. Let's see. When is the actual release date actually? Talos Principle comes out November 2nd. So actually it might be okay. Might be fine. That gives people probably about a week to play it if I had to guess. And I think that might be enough time to get people to play it. We'll see though. Only other ones I wanted to throw out was I think maybe Wizard with a Gun has a chance. That's a new Devolver joint. I played it. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I know people have been talking about it. I don't really have too much else to say about it.
I don't think I've seen anything on that either.
And then the last one, which is more of just a shout out for me because I think it's cool as hell, is War Stride Challenges. There ain't no way it's going to get nominated, but it should. It's cool as hell.
That's awesome.
War Stride Challenges is basically Doom speed runs, but multiplayer.
Ooh, I love that. I love that.
A very cool game. Very, very cool game. Highly recommend. And yeah. Though, actually, I just thought of this in reference to our whole talk about Riot Forge earlier. Song of Nunu comes out November 2nd. I mean, could get nominated. I doubt it, but it could get nominated.
Could.
I mean, Tequila Gameworks has had nominated games before, right? Tequila Gameworks. Or Tequila Works, sorry.
You got me interested in this War Stride. Oh, also, I think Ghost Runner 2 just came out, or it comes out soon. That could be a good honorable mention. I actually really enjoyed Ghost Runner. I think it's very niche. I think you have to be, I think you have to like games like Neon White too much to play Ghost Runner. It's a very hard game. Very twitchy. Twitchier than Doom.
I keep meaning to get back to Ghost Runner 1, and I just keep on.
Same. Absolutely same. I'm probably just over halfway through the game, and I just can't push myself to finish it, but it is a great game.
Yeah. And that's pretty much all I got as far as games that I think will get nominated. I see in chat they're talking about For the King 2.
I've never heard of it.
I'm excited for that. For the King was pretty good. For the King 2 should be pretty good. It's basically like a choice simulator type game. You're basically a king that has to make a bunch of choices, and none of the choices are really all that good. So your kingdom just kind of keeps on getting shit on. But for 1 week till it releases, I didn't know it was coming out that soon. I mean, maybe that once again that might be cutting it pretty close, but maybe.
When does
bias, you know?
I mean, this isn't indie, but when does Prince of Persia come out? I think it's next year.
Yeah, January something or other. I know because I specifically signed up for Ubisoft Plus so I can play Assassin's Creed. Avatar,
yep, January 18th.
Boom, with the bullet.
He's got it.
I got it. I got them dates, baby. Oh, yeah, I specifically signed up for Ubisoft Plus so I could play Mirage and then play Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, and then play Prince of Persia, and then cancel Ubisoft Plus.
Nice. How we do it.
Avatar. I mean, hey, I get to play 3 AAA games basically for the price of less than 1.
Right. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah, can't beat
Well, I
it.
was glad I was able to play the very dishonorable mentioned Starfield basically free.
Yeah.
So that was nice. Because I don't think I would play it more than I did play it. I actually played it more than I should have played it, to be honest. I wasted probably a good 15 hours on it or more.
You know, I just realized though, we gotta scratch my entire first list.
Uh-oh.
We got to scratch the whole thing because we all know it's going to be Exoprimal.
I do want to check it out.
Exoprimal.
All 6 are Exoprimal.
All 6 Exoprimal.
That was a good way to end that. So yeah, I think I've never played it, but I trust your judgment. I do want to play it. It just seems like it's so in the sticks that nobody even like. It's so niche that nobody even talking about it. And maybe it's because it's the world of, or it's the year of the bangers.
I think it is the year of the bangers, where it's just like Exoprimal is already a weird sell. Hey, you're gonna go in mechs and kill a bunch of dinosaurs, and it's kind of like
I'm in.
Overwatch. I mean, that's the thing. For me as a player, I'm like, that's all you had to say. Mechs and dinosaurs, like, I'm in. Like, what are we doing? But I mean, in a year where it's like you've got all these other games, that I would hope that it maybe gets mentioned in like best multiplayer or best action. I don't think it will because a lot of people did not like it. Like, it did not review amazingly. And I think that is a little bit of a fault on the game itself. Not necessarily because the game is bad, but because of the way the game match makes is very bad, which is like I could have a whole episode on Exoprimal, honestly. I love that game. But yeah, a lot of some weird stuff stacked up against Exoprimal. It's Capcom's first like real push into making a live service game. And I'm really hoping they stick with it because I really think they got something cool with it. But, you know, live service games right now are just, you know, they're dropping like flies. They come out for like 3 months and they're like, oh, we didn't make enough money. So
it's the unfortunate reality of having to have the money aspect of it. But I mean, they can be bangers. I mean, that one game, the dragon dogfighting game, Century Age of Ashes, yeah, that looks so good, but it's dying, you know, or it's dead. There's like 4 players that play it, so
yeah, exactly. I tried to go back and like couldn't even get into a game. We could talk about this on a different episode because, you know, I know we're already approaching 2 hours, but
yeah,
the live service thing I will say is the one thing I'm glad Exoprimal did is I'm glad they charged money for the game. I think that live service games need to start charging up front again. I think this free to play stuff is just killing these games because they're banking on people coming in and spending a bunch of money.
Right.
And the reality
bad mentality for it.
And most people aren't coming in and spending the money. You know,
right.
That's just the reality of what it is now. I think it's better charge an upfront fee of $30, $40. Exoprimal charged $60, which I think is probably a little high. I think they probably should have charged like around $40.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, like, I think that's
in a world where there's $70, at least it's not 70.
Yeah, I think that Exoprimal, because they charge money for it, is going to live a lot longer. Because they'll have more funding from that. Because no one was going to buy these mech skins,
right? And they're
cool, but
right. No one's going to get it for free and then buy a bunch of skins. It's like, well, I'll pay to play, but I won't pay to accessorize if I'm not going to play the game that often. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay,
but that can be. We can have a whole live service topic on a different episode.
For sure, I'm down. That's same. That was what a great list. What a great year. If you had to pick one of these games, what do you think's actually going to take it? One of the main games, not the indie, the main games.
I think it's Tears of the Kingdom.
Really interesting.
I think so.
I think so as well.
I think when we look at everything as far as like who's actually played all the games. How many critics out of the 100 do you think have actually beaten Baldur's Gate 3?
I mean, I don't think they've gotten much further than the tutorial, if I'm being completely honest.
And so I that's why I think more people were likely to have beat Tears of the Kingdom. And so I think Tears of the Kingdom takes it.
I would agree with that. Good way to close it out.
Yeah, I think Tears of the Kingdom takes it, unfortunately.
Yeah, when you, I want to hear your take on it the next time. Not the next time, but on one of these future podcasts, I want you to have played through more, and then let me know how you feel about it. Not just gameplay, because you know what you're getting, but I want to hear what you think about the story too. Because it's not something that's going to blow you away, but it brought a tear to my eye. I'm just saying, it brought a tear to my kingdom.
All right. It brought a tear to my kingdom.
And on that note, we can call it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Great talking to you. We're going to stay in call for just a second, just so we can play it out here. But yes, I love you guys. That's been Buttoned Up. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have anything to close it out on, you can go ahead and end it there.
We'll be on podcast services soon. I'm going to be looking into that today. Once we get that up, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. We're talking video games.
All right. See you guys later.
Right. See ya.